This year marks the 25th anniversary of a program that many Canadians have never heard of. International Peace Operations is an RCMP branch that has sent more than 3,500 Canadian police officers to some of the world's most dangerous places. Worth Dying For is an in-depth look at the work these men and women are undertaking, written by the only journalist to have unfettered access to their missions. That journalist is Terry Gould, and he joins us from Vancouver this morning. Nice to have you with us.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's a very important topic.
It sure is. And tell us how you got involved, because I know that you were doing a talk, as the story goes, and you met somebody there who led you to all of this. Tell us about that, Terry.
Yeah, I'd covered some of the world's most corrupt countries, and I noticed that when human rights workers or journalists were murdered, it was usually the police that arranged those murders. And I began to wonder, how do you reform entire police forces so that they can keep a check on their political masters? And I was invited to give a talk at senior RCMP officers in Surrey, and there just happened to be a guy there. And I got to talking to him. His name is Superintendent Joe McAllister, and he told me that the RCMP actually had a whole unit that was dedicated to practical means to reforming police forces in countries that had been devastated by war or were on the teetering on the brink of destruction, and that they've been doing it for many, many years, and that they've been on 50 missions in 30 failing states. So I decided to follow them around and see how they went about this Mission Impossible in places like Haiti and Palestine and Afghanistan. And basically I got access to accompany them in these places and watch them train recruits amidst gunfire and devastation.
Which is why the title of the book is called Worth Dying For. And of course, Terry, we can't get to everybody that you've profiled in your book in the scope of this interview, but tell us about Corporal Candace McMacken, because it's an interesting dynamic. She's a female officer training male as well as female officers in Afghanistan.
Yes, well, she had an extraordinary courage. She went out amidst gunfire and suicide bombers and trained male Afghan police in a society where women virtually had no rights. And the goal was to show the population in general, and the Afghan police in particular, that by their professionalism, women were the equal of men. And she trained these 19-year-old recruits at checkpoints, and she trained their commanders in investigative techniques, and they were really impressed with her. In fact, they publicly praised her for her valor. She had spectacular relationships with colonels, and here she was, a corporal. And she took the same risks as them, and she stood out there in 100-degree heat and 50 pounds of body armor, patrolled the streets with them. And the human rights workers that I spoke to said that she'd had made a definite change in the way they approached policing. They could see that police were different before she had trained them and after she had trained them. And of course, she wasn't alone. But she did the same sort of work that our officers had been doing around the world, and some of them had been captured and tortured, and some of them had been killed and came home wounded or suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, yet they'd been doing this for years and years in some of the world's failing states, and they've had some success, some they've had draws, and some they've had failures. But it's actually a program that's doing a lot of work and a lot of good work in a lot of places, and I'd like Canadians to be aware of the fact that thousands of their officers have been doing this for 25 years.
It's such an important message, Terry, and you outline so many more that have stories much like Corporal McMacken. The book is called Worth Dying For. We thank you for sharing the message and sharing your book with us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for honoring them.
Oh, thank you.